One way to start thinking about happiness that I find quite helpful is to think of it as placed on a continuum between the purely subjective and the very objective. So, very subjective, Raymond Baliotti calls a happiness as a positive state of mind. It's basically, if you feel happy, then you are happy. It doesn't matter if this is infused, if this is delusional, or if you're under drugs or anything. If you feel happy, you're happy. The second is happiness as positive self-appraisal. Now, this is based on having a number of normative ideals. So if your idea of being happy is to have a car, for example, and you live up to that, you get yourself a car, then fine, you're happy. You have some kind of normative ideals. If your idea of happiness is to spend time with family or to have a family in the first place, and you manage to do that, then again, you lived up to your own idea what happiness is. Moving down to the more objective side, you have happiness as accurate self-appraisal. Accurate here means that it is appraisal that is shared in a community. So it's not only you that would think that having a car is what makes you happy, or having a family is what makes you happy, but you're in a community where these normative ideals are shared or sanctioned, if you like. So that is what gives it kind of accuracy, or at least it gives it a sort of social legitimacy. And finally, happiness as connection to objective pre-existing good, which is basically an idea of happiness. This is what you often find in religion, that is trying to pursue something higher than just subjective well-being or material comfort. It is often an idea of happiness that could be metaphysical, like dedicating your life to a god. It could be committing yourself to a cause that you find higher than yourself. So that would be an idea of a more objective idea of what happiness means. Just to give you a sense of how we think about happiness today, I just said a few words about Aristotle. For him, happiness was about being good. It was a moral, ethical project. He called this eudaimonia. And this was mainly about trying to craft and develop a set of virtuous faculties. You should be brave, courageous, generous. This was an idea of happiness. It was to be good. It was to work on yourself, always to become a better person. And especially a person who could think better. Bios theoreticos is the life of the mind, and this in ancient Greece was what was valued more than anything else. Work and other things was mostly seen as a necessary evil. It was the life of the mind that was the central occupation. And it was a relatively modest lifestyle, not ascetical in the Christian in the Christian sense of self-punishment, but ascetical in the sense of a very modest life with no luxurious goods or anything like that. Now, in contrast to this, you would find a more modern idea of happiness starting in Rousseau, which is more about the emotional and sensory elements. It's about feeling good. And Rousseau described happiness as a scene where he lies in a boat and he could feel complete union with the nature around him and feel this fantastic harmony. And for him, happiness is something that has to come from within. So he would think about an authentic core hidden within every self. And the idea of happiness is to bring this out and to stay true to your inner core. So this is something very different to what you find in Aristotle, where it was mainly a moral project. It was trying to become better, whereas in Rousseau, it's more about feeling good. And that really constitutes the foundation of how we think about happiness today. And some vulgar examples of this would be Dr. Phil, made famous in the Oprah show many years ago, where he thinks about the authentic self as this absolute core. And this is something that you need to let flourish, and you can sense how it flourished in those times when you felt happiest and most fulfilled. A kind of related, similar idea to this is found in Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I think that's how you pronounce it. This is his idea of flow. Flow is when everything is just matching, and he thinks about this as a state of mind where there are no disruptions, no tension, things are just working really well. Now, I wanted to provoke you a little bit with this notion of feeling good. I mean, if this is really what we value, then would you do the following thing? Would you descend into a tank floating in water and then just have all of your emotions and thoughts manipulated by neuropsychologists, leading you to believe that you live a very fulfilled, meaningful, and happy life. Would you do it? I asked you, and the majority of you said no. I think only 15% said yes. Now, really, the main thing of positive psychology is the idea that you are the boss. You are the one in the driver's seat. It's all up to you whether you're going to be happy or not. One of the more sophisticated accounts is by this woman, Sonia Lyubomirsky, who came up with this pie. I'm not entirely sure exactly how she came up with it. Reading the book is not going to make you understand it in any more detail, really. Anyway, she comes up with a figure of 40%, that this is the amount of power we have over our lives. So we have a different set of circumstances, and you have your genes, but 40% of your life you could decide over. And she says this is great news because it means that in principle everyone could be happy. And I was showing a clip that you'll find on the blog where she talks about it.
But can it?
So how much really can we change? And here I was taking it one step further, looking at Rhonda Byrne, who wrote, she didn't write, she came out with a DVD called The Secret. And The Secret is about what she calls the law of attraction. It's not a very complicated idea. Basically, if you have positive thoughts, then this will somehow give positive results. And I wanted you to look at this in relationship to cancer, and it's really common that in cancer, especially breast cancer, and you'd find this in the pink ribbon movement. These are people who are supporting people in breast cancer, many people suffering from breast cancer themselves and relatives. And it's all about having a positive attitude. That is the basis for the entire movement. And the idea, if you have a positive attitude, you're going to be more likely to fight cancer. You're going to be more likely to survive. Well, is this true or not? I think just over 75% of you would say yes. Now, there's been no research at all that's been done to prove this, and I'll give you some examples of this on the blog. And we then look at Barbara Ehrenreich, who herself suffered from breast cancer. This is a good clip. You find the rest on the blog. But the idea here of positive psychology is that everything you do is your own responsibility. And Rhonda Byrne, in one of her less successful public appearances, said in relationship to the tsunami in 2006 that these people, the people who died, were on the same frequency as the event. So basically, they had the wrong thinking, the wrong attitude, and that was ultimately will kill them. So if you think of the argument that if you're positive, you're going to be more likely to fight cancer, many people would agree with that, but some people would take it one step further. Like, for example, Rhonda Byrne, saying that if you get cancer, it was probably about your negative mindset in the first place. That's what brought it about. So this is what Barbara Ehrenreich is calling the flip side of positivity. That to insist on personal responsibility means that anything could happen in your life. You could lose your job, lose your business, you could get ill, and in the end of the day, according to this movement of positivity, it was your own fault. You brought this upon yourself because of your inability to think more positively. And I gave this as a metaphor from a documentary. I'll put it on the blog as well. And then finally, we were running off this lecture with trying to look at happiness in organization in a different way. So one way to start looking at this is in Arlie Russell Hochschild's book, The Managed Heart, which is all about how you control emotions. It also have some stuff in chapter 2 of the book I wrote with Peter, which is about attempts to squeeze more life out of workers by a vocabulary and a jargon of happiness. And then finally, the key book here again is Barbara Ehrenreich and her focus on positivity being about this culture of your own fault. And she links this to Calvinism, which was a version of Protestant religion dominant, especially in the United States in the 19th century. And this is a kind of religion which is all about self-blame. And then she's saying this is basically what the whole positive psychology movement is all about. And then she's making some very interesting connections to how this is being used in the world of business and the world of organization, especially in times of hardship, in times of recession and downsizing. So if you're losing your job, if a company has to downsize, then these would be things that wouldn't really be understood as so much to do with economic or political factors, but more with personal ones. And I ended the whole lecture with showing this clip from Slavoj Žižek, which I very much like.
You know, happiness is for me a very compromised category. It doesn't enter the frame. You have a serious ideological deviation at the very beginning.